Hello and welcome to this edition of Ritter's Rant. Today we're going to be talking about mental war, psychological warfare, information warfare, all combined together. It's a concept that was, promulgated to the public in March of 2021 by a Russian lieutenant general named Andrei Ilnitsky. He gave an interview where he talked about this ongoing mental warfare that was being waged by the West against Russia. What is mental warfare? Well, basically, it's a manipulation of data. It's using resources like the mainstream media, like the internet. It's straight up propaganda, but it's designed to tear down a society from within. Basically, to plant the seeds of doubt within a society, to have them question their leadership, to have them question their laws, to have them question the very essence of their existence, to question themselves, and then to, basically carve out society, cause it to rot from within, and then it'll make it easier for society to collapse. And according to General Ilnitsky, Russia has been the subject of mental warfare being waged by the West against it. We've called this many things. Russophobia, helps create the conditions for mental warfare because, it means that it's actually a force multiplier for those who are committing mental warfare against Russia, because you're able to recruit allies, new allies who are unwitting perhaps in their complicity in what they're doing, simply by repeating what they've been told to say by mainstream media, by the government. They're, a force multiplier for the weaponry that's used in mental warfare, this information that's being flowed. If you say something, if you tell a lie long enough and over and over again with enough confidence, eventually people are going to start to believe that lie. Perception creates its own reality. And this is what mental warfare is supposed to do: create a perception of failure, a perception of incompetence, a perception of the inevitability of defeat, just a negative attitude that will, again, the goal is to collapse the society from within. Why am I bringing this up? Look, I've been to Russia several times in the last couple of months, and I have to tell you that if the goal of those who are practicing mental warfare is to collapse Russia from within, it's not succeeding. By identifying this problem, the Russians have been able to counter this with, first of all, effective governance. It's very difficult to convince somebody that the world has gone to hell when they look around them and see actually things are functioning quite well. And I'm here to tell you right now, in Russia, things are functioning A-OK. So it's failed in Russia. But why am I bringing it to you, this audience? Because mental warfare is a tool that can be used not just against the Russians, but against an American audience or a European audience. And it can work in a number of ways. You can promote ideas that are unsustainable. That'll wear people down. Or you can condition people to accept things that are unacceptable under normal conditions. To give you an example, in the United States, we're conditioning the American public that it's okay for the United States Navy, for the United States Coast Guard, to commit murder in the high seas and acts of piracy, where the rule of law doesn't matter. And here's the slippery slope, ladies and gentlemen. Once society gets conditioned to believe that there are exceptions to the rule of law, that the rule of law is not an absolute, then where do you draw the line? Because the next thing you know, what they're doing in the Caribbean, they'll be doing in the streets of Chicago, or the streets of Detroit, or the streets of LA, or the streets of any major American city. And they'll say, well, don't worry about it. This is just the same thing that we were doing before. That's what you voted for, isn't it? That's what you wanted. Now we're delivering. No matter what we vote for, unless it's an amendment to the Constitution takes precedent over everything. But it's happening overseas as well, this concept that the laws don't apply. The European Union today has just announced that they're going to steal $250 billion worth of Russian assets. It's unlawful. They've created some sort of unique framework under their their constitution. But at the bottom line, it's just outright theft. But it's okay to steal from the Russians because they're just Russians. And they've done something horrible by invading Ukraine. Well, Russia didn't invade Ukraine. Russia initiated a special military operation to defend the Russian-speaking population of Ukraine from the criminal activities of an illegal Ukrainian government that seized power in 2014 and began immediately attacking the Russian-speaking people with military force, killing them and generating the conflict that exists today. That's the truth. But we're not allowed to know the truth. The Russophobes have ensured that there's a completely different narrative being painted out there for the broader audience. And so now we've painted the Russians as bad people, and now we say we can do anything we want against these bad people, to include stealing their assets. It's theft. There's no due process here. There's no legal authority to do this. It's outright theft. And the thing is, there will be consequences for this. I mean, there's a good chance that Russia will successfully challenge this theft, and it could lead to the collapse of the Eurozone, the collapse of the European economy. But as that economy collapses, one of the justifications that the Europeans have used to steal this Russian money is because of the failure of their Ukrainian policy. An economic emergency has emerged that requires the European Union to take decisive action. And so they're stealing Russia's assets. It's not going to work, and the Ukrainian economy is going to collapse further, and so will the European economy. This emergency won't go away. So what's next? Now that they've stolen Russian assets, whose assets will they steal next, declaring an emergency? America's? The individual assets of the European people? Once you start excusing violations of the law, there's no stopping it. This is a problem that is existing today in Europe, and it's a problem that's existing in the United States. The European governments, the European Union, the European Commission, they're waging mental war against the European population. And the American government is waging mental war against the American population. They're doing it to prop up the policies they want to promote. But the effect in the end of the day is that they're rotting their respective societies from within. And if you keep this rot going unchecked, these societies will collapse. Mental war. It's real. Think about it. Thanks for listening to me. Next time an idea crosses my mind, I'll be sure to let you know.